Let me start this meeting by first saying, if I can find it. I got to read this damn thing, so I'm going to read it off another screen. Let's see. Notice of public meeting, Design Review Board, August 16, 2021, 4 o'clock, via the Zoom. Consistent with the governor's orders of extension of certain provisions of the open meeting law, every effort will be made to allow public to view and listen to the meeting in real time. Persons who wish to do so are invited to click on the following, and it gives a link. If you do not have a camera microphone on your computer, you may use the following dial-up number, 1312-622-6799, meeting ID 953-8692-9958, passcode 124146. Please only dial in or in on computer or not both. Audio feedback will distract from meeting. This meeting will be audio recorded, which leads me to a few other things. Well, I guess I'm not going to have it here. There it is. I have to claim host somewhere. All right, I think we're in. So we are discussing 381 Main Street, Rockland Trust, which is taking over, I guess, the bank that's down there, which is maybe Jason can tell me. I forget at this point.
It's East Boston Savings Bank.
East Boston Savings, right. So why don't you go through what you're doing? And I have done a little bit of homework, but I looked at all the stuff you guys have submitted, and it covers quite a range of area, basically better than some of our other applicants have done. And I expect these from banks anyway, because they usually go out and hire somebody that knows what the heck they're doing. So why don't you walk us through it?
Sure.
And I guess I've got to give you the screen. So let's start with that. All right, you should be able to share your screen.
Oh, yep, I can. Perfect. Perfect. Can you all see my screen? It should be the top page. Perfect. All right, I'll just walk through the site, and if you want to ask questions along the way, please do, or I can go through the whole thing and we can talk about it after, but whatever you would like. So as you said, and again, thank you all for having us this afternoon to talk about this or hosting us. Rockland Trust is going to take over East Boston Savings Bank and continue it as a bank, which is great. So this is a corner site at the corner of Main, and do you pronounce it Albion?
Albion, yeah.
Albion, okay, yep. So the corner of Main and Albion's, and I'm just gonna move you guys over. There we go, so I can see. So on the front facade, we have a set of channel letters above an awning. On the secondary facade on Albion Street, we have another set of channel letters over an awning, and then there's some window graphics, but I'll go through each one. So these kind of just show some photos the main signage that exists currently. So you have the front elevation with the awning and channel letters. That's zoomed up view of that. You have plate cut letters on the brick wall here at the entrance with some vinyl graphics. And then on the side here, we have channel letters over an awning. And then we have the ATM on the inside. So on the first sign, which is on Main Street, we would like to remove the existing Eastern Boston Savings Bank letters that are on a raceway, clean up and paint that facade to match the existing areas in that same band, and then install new Rockland Trust banking letters that are on raceways, facelit, similar to what is currently there at East Boston Savings Bank. And then we're going to come out and because this is a bank conversion and we need to kind of have everything happen at the same weekend, unveil everything, we would come out, remove this signage, install this signage, and then we would install this banner to provide East Boston Savings Bank identity until the conversion weekend. So this would be up a couple of weeks, could be a week.
So you're going to leave, so you're going to take their sign down and put this temporary sign up. And then a following period of time, you'll put your final sign up.
We actually we'll take their sign down and then install this sign. And then put this over that sign.
Ah.
And that's done so that we then can kind of convert all the locations in one weekend.
When you say all the locations, are you doing all of East Boston's banks? Other locations?
Yes, all of East Boston Savings Bank's locations will become Rockland Trusts.
Is the awning backlit?
The awning is not backlit, but I'm just going to confirm that with a survey note just to make sure here.
It looks like it's, I haven't paid attention downtown at night, and it looks like it's covered on the bottom like it might be backlit.
I think it just has egg crate on the bottom, which is just material that kind of hides the frame, gives it a nicer look. I don't believe that awning is backlit. And Rockland Trust, if it is backlit, Rockland Trust wouldn't necessarily want to backlit it because that's not what they do with their brand.
All right.
And then, so this is actually specifically talking about the awning. And this will be a canvas material. And they use a Sombrella Ocean Blue. It's very similar, actually, this blue. And Sombrella is not meant to be backlit. It doesn't like, it's not, it's like a sail canvas fabric as opposed to like a more commercial kind of stretched material, which is translucent, can be translucent. And that the main entrance, which is basically right at the corner, there's this existing East Boston Savings Bank, which are dimensional letters. And we're going to remove those East Boston Savings Bank's letters and have a new blue panel that has Rockland Trust banking, and that would be mounted in basically the same location as you can see here in this photo comp. And then that will have a banner temporarily. And then on Albion Street or the side street, we'll remove the existing channel letters there, do the same type of painting, and install new channel letters in that same space and recover the awning with new fabric. And then we'll put a banner on that to convert it. So that's kind of the composite of the site. And then we have some, we move the vinyl. It's a little hard to see in this image, but the existing East Boston Savings Bank door vinyls will all be removed, and new pretty standard door vinyl will be installed with Rockland Trust, their lobby hours, the services they offer, and the side light, and a refresh of the blue. And these drawings here kind of show what that is. And then the framing is just repainted. And then the interior ATM, which is really not part of this scope, but that will obviously change to Rockland Trust. So that's pretty much the scope of the work at that site. Is there any particular questions? Or you want me to go to a particular page?
Well, if I can get my stuff up, I suppose.
Do you want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Okay.
And I'll see if I can wiggle my way in here to share my stuff. So All right, can you see all that?
I see just a white screen right now.
Okay, should be coming across.
It looks like a whiteboard. I don't know if that like where you
Yeah,
could write.
yeah, Jim, it's blank.
Is it? Okay. Hmm.
Zoom will default to share like a whiteboard. And so when you hit share, sometimes you have to select kind of your desktop.
How's that?
Yeah, that's good.
That's good. Thank you.
All right, so here's where this is going to go. You have a bunch of stuff that exceeds the allowance of the overlay district. We have two sign codes in town. One is basically Albion Street overlay, the Main Street overlay, which doesn't include all of Main Street, it doesn't go down as far as the junior high school. It covers a portion of Greenwood and a portion of the Melrose Wakefield line down by Billy's Roast Beef and Albion and a portion of Albion Street. Everything else is under an old code. So what they did in 2010 was they put out the overlay district for signage and put more restrictions basically on what can and can't be done. So what I'm going to relate is to sections, and I can absolutely forward this to you basically, but because the text sections basically I put in here, particularly the ones in red, tell the story basically. But because you're changing everything, you come under basically the new code. If you were just the bank as it was, basically, you were already grandfathered in before that. But once you start changing signs and changing the appearance of it, then basically you got to be conformed. So it says non-conforming signs lawfully erected prior to the adoption of this article may not be enlarged, extended, altered, redesigned unless they are made to comply with all application requirements of this article. Now, the zoning board can give you basically a relief here under a special permit. But the zoning board's limited as to what it can do because there are certain regulations that say you shall not, zoning board, basically give a special permit for certain things. But the zoning board can vary the size, it can vary the lettering, it can vary a lot of stuff, all right? And this group that you're before right now is primarily an extension of the zoning board in a way, so that they don't have to deal with every sign in town. And in the end, what we do is we will basically tell you whether we agree with what you are in compliance. And if you are in compliance, what we do is we write a memo to the building department saying, we recommend granting a permit. We can't grant a permit. All we can do is recommend. All we can do is tell them that you comply, all right? Now, if you don't comply, what we're going to do, and this will be the case in here, we tell the building permit that we do not recommend granting a permit because the following sections are not in compliance. And most likely what will happen is here, you'll want to go to the zoning board for a special permit. So what we'll do in the memo is we'll say to the building department that we understand the applicant is going to apply for a special permit, basically, or apply with the zoning board for a special permit and make a presentation. Now, it takes 90 days to go through this process. What happens is you file your paperwork, and then there's a 2-week or so period where they notify the abutters in the area within, I think it's 200 feet. And then there's a public notification of the hearing and who it is and what it's about. And then there's the hearing. And then after the hearing, there's another waiting period basically before the permit can be issued. But in the end, that's 90 days, assuming that it passes going through the first time.
Right.
So that's the process. So, and it's all triggered by the fact that you made so many changes, all right? So having said all that, there is a table 1, which covers a lot of stuff in the zoning code, but I'm going to take you through each street basically and tell you what you got. So the temporary banner is 6 square feet. That's what you're allowed, not 35, which your intent is to cover over temporary. That doesn't matter. It's still a temporary banner. It's still 6 square feet. Normally, this is used for a business coming into town who hasn't got their final signage yet approved, or hasn't got it designed because they've been thinking too long and too much about what they're going to do inside the building as opposed to announcing what they are outside the building. So it's a way for them basically to get 90 days of coverage basically for that. So you don't comply, but you're also using it in a different manner. So I would think that if you took this to the zoning board, that they would understand that this is more of a temporary covering, so to speak, than a banner. Although it may be a banner, by definition, under the code, this is what you're going to have to deal with. So that's item number 1. Item number 2 on this list is 15 square feet is all you're allowed for signage, wall signage. All right. Now, that doesn't take into account whether you're a big storefront or a small storefront. We have a new code that we're working on. We have been for 2.5 years, basically, and eventually there'll be some leverage on that. But right now there's none. So if you want to go, which you do, go beyond the 15 square feet, then you need to go to the zoning board. Now, we as board members can say that your request of 23 square feet, we don't agree with. It ought to be 25, or it ought to be, 20 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't, amongst us, we haven't discussed that yet as to what the appropriate appearance of this is. And I don't think we have any information as to what the sign size is there now, so we can make a comparison, basically. That may be in the stuff you've submitted. I can't say that I've thoroughly gone through it, every ounce of it, but that's an issue, basically. So if you do have the existing sign size and you can tell us what it is now versus what it's going to be.
Sure, I can, if you want, I can
scale.
do that. I can do that now. I mean, on the drawings, we'll show the photo of what the sign is.
Yeah.
And then underneath that, it will give you information on the existing size as you flip through the documents, but I'll just read it to you right now. So that sign on Main Street,
Yep.
it is 2 foot high. And the lettering, the E in East Boston Savings Bank, is 1 foot 6 inch high. That's the cap height. And its width is 15 foot 6. And the overall square footage of that sign is 31 square feet.
All right, so you're downsizing a bit, basically.
Yes, the height is going to 2 foot 2 overall, just because of the way the word banking and Rockland, that relationship is. But the cap height is only 1 foot. So you're going to a 1 foot tall cap height, and your width is 13 foot 0 and 7/8. Well, basically 13 foot 1. So you're right, you end up with a 28.3.
Okay, so let's put this aside for a minute, because what I'm going to ask you to do is get back on and we can look at the images basically before or afterwards again and pay attention to sizing.
Sure.
In the end, we have to vote as to whether we understand that 15 square feet may not be appropriate. On the other hand, is in our minds is 28 appropriate. So we're going to have to vote on that because, like I say, eventually we're going to have to write a memo to the ZBA saying we agree with what's submitted, or we agree on this item but not on that item, and make a recommendation.
Right.
So I don't want to get hung up here because this is the same. This ends up being the same in the multiple locations. So staying with Main Street,
Mhm.
the lettering size at 14 basically is fine. That's compliant. Backlighting is not allowed, and you've got LEDs basically on the back of these things. They just don't want it basically or allow it. In fact, box signs are, you might define these as somewhat box signs. I'm not sure, but anyways, they certainly don't want them backlit. They prefer basically gooseneck lights. And if you look at some of the buildings around, you'll see the goosenecks around town. They want this sort of, you know, town character basically in goosenecks. The next one is, I don't have the information, but I think it's on your drawings and I didn't get down there to measure it, is the 2/3 storefront sign doesn't exceed 2/3 of the frontage. And when I say that, it's the occupiable space. So the tenants on either side of you doesn't count. It's basically your square footage basically on the face of the building.
Right.
So I'd have to get down there and tape it out and see whether you exceed the 2/3. If you exceed the 2/3, then you have to ask for something from the ZBA. On the other hand, if you don't, then it's not really an issue for you at all.
Right.
The fixed awning are not allowed at all. They basically are looking for retractable awnings. And they're probably, I mean, this is primarily being used as an accent on the building. But what they're looking for is retractable for pedestrian usage, basically. So in the rain, snow, whatever else, is something there. I'm not sure that a retractable awning on this building style is maybe appropriate, but doesn't matter. Fixed awnings are not allowed. And this is one of those items that the ZBA cannot give you relief on because it's under the category of, I forget what the category is. But anyways, it's under category that clearly states that they cannot give you relief on this particular category. So you're
Okay.
going to end up losing that. Moving along to the corner, I'm going to pass the corner for a minute and go on to Albion. So
Okay.
Albion sort of runs the same gamut. The banner, the 15 square feet, the LED backlighting, the 2/3, and then the awning. So that runs the same gamut as the Main Street one. Entry, again, it's the banner. It's the size of the sign. It's 20 square feet versus 15. And then there's the 14 square foot lettering, that's fine. But here comes the problem. You can only have 2 wall signs. You can't have 3. And you get the second one because you're on a corner. And because the doorway basically serves both corners, it's sort of, you got to accept the reality of this as the board here, I would think, that doorway services both sides of the building. If you read the regulations, it says basically you're allowed a sign on a corner on either side if there's a doorway on either side, which would basically say there are 2 doorways into the building. But because this is one doorway that services both sides, I'm making a decision, basically, you allowed for that second sign. To some degree, there's a little historical element here in that there's always been a second sign on there. So, but you can't have this sign here on this side. Now, the board could grant it to you. So, ask for it, but it's not allowed in the code. Again, the board basically here would have to determine whether in fact we think there needs to be 3 signs on this building, or are we already got overkill on this building? So we'll come back to that along with the previous discussion of size between the signs. Moving along, the entry door, they're supposed to be 10% of the glass area. Not having any information on what the total glass area is, I don't know with what you proposed is 10% of the glass area. And you have to measure everything by filling a rectangle. So, you know, if you close the spacing up, maybe it would be 10%, maybe it wouldn't read too well either. So here's a place where if you're not meeting the 10%, you may want to ask the board for relief here. That also goes for the side light. So I haven't looked at this and determined whether you're 10% or not, because I don't have information on the actual size of the glass. So I don't know what 10% equals.
Right. Okay.
Certainly not backing down and take it off, but I haven't.
And we have those dimensions as well, so I'll check too.
Okay, all right. So the next one, and some of the stuff you guys have picked up in your notes, all right? So the next one is that the total business signage, basically, if you take the total square footage of signage, which includes all the wall signs, all the window signs, basically, has to be 50 square feet or less, or whichever's less, 10% of the footprint, the front of the building, the side of the building, plus the height, not of the building, but of your space. So we have to determine where is the height of your space on the outside, and that square footage, basically, you take your signage and see whether it's 10% of that total area, basically, or is it 50, or if it's 50%, you know, or less, and the 10% is more, then 50% rules. And this section, I've indicated the section here in the paragraph as to where this is, so you can go and look it up, basically. Special permits. So as I said earlier, the board can make a recommendation, basically will make a recommendation, depending on what you're chasing, on this, as to whether we're thumbs up or thumbs down on some of this. And this first step will be basically a memo to the building department, basically recommending not granting your permit. That opens the way for you to go to the zoning board for special permit. The sign, then we have to, when we write to the building for the zoning board, basically, we have to look at items 1 through 6, basically, as to whether they are, and I just highlighted a few, basically, on this thing. Reasonable relationship with the development of scale, basically, on the building and around the area. Notwithstanding special permit granting shall not grant special permit for signs that are prohibited. And I already mentioned that. The awnings are not allowed, so they won't have any control over that. Design review board shall make report to the special permit granting authority. So as I said, we'll send them a memo as to our thoughts. And before we leave here, we'll vote on some of this stuff, so you'll know where we're coming from to start with. Okay. Unfavorably reported design review shall indicate which of the above criteria are not met. So again, you know, we'll mention the awnings and some other stuff or things we're recommending. And you may say, you know, if we say, for instance, the wall signs are too big, you may go back to your client, or you may shrink them and send us a new submission with signs shrunk, so that we can report to the zoning board that we have come to an agreement on the size of the sign, and therefore you get a positive from us to the zoning board, even though it's over the 15 square feet. Or you get a negative from us if you stay with what you got and we don't agree with it. Right. But that doesn't mean the board will vote with us. Sometimes they don't. There's 7 members on there. I'm one, but I do not basically participate in the voting. I only participate in the presentation, basically. And you all will have to basically come to the presentation as well.
Right.
So like I say, they don't necessarily go with us, but they listen. It's, it's 75 to 90% they'll go with us. And if you want to play the lottery, you can play for 10%, And, that's, color is in illumination and stuff like that, is a big issue for us as well.
Mhm.
So having said all that, and those are the issues I've got, within the code, are the things you want to ask us before we ask you to go back and represent.
Well, just quickly, thank you for putting this together. This is very helpful to see this outlined. And you can email this to me with that.
Yes, I will.
Great, that'd be very helpful. And I understand, that this, you guys have changed the code quite a bit since those signs were originally installed a long time, which have been grandfathered for a long time. So now we're coming under this new guidelines, which is it's going to be expected at times. We probably will go into the ZBA route, but I would like definitely to walk through the site with you, and hopefully you guys are comfortable with most of the sizing we have as it relates to the building, and hear your opinions on that. That would be helpful.
I should know, one of the things I personally will look at is under the new proposed code. And when I propose, it's still in committee, all right? There's not a limit on the 15 square feet on the wall signs, all right? It's based on basically frontage. There's a multiplier involved. What I would look at would be the on the ground and using the multiplier to see what the square footage comes out to be for the sign. Because I, as a member of that group that's looking at revising this, I want to be able to point to later when it goes to the town for approval that this sign or that sign for a particular business is in compliance with this new ordinance. And they would then understand what it does basically for those businesses, because they physically can see it.
Right.
And as opposed to just saying 15 square feet is now 20 or 30 or whatever, basically. But I'll tell you, this is a rather large sign in relationship on the upper end scale, basically. I think 35, around 5 feet is the upper end of the scale. And it's based on CVS downtown.
Okay.
So that's, and I don't remember, I have to look it up. I don't remember what multiplication factor is, but I certainly, if you were to send me, well, actually, I would just go down and do my own measure and look at what it would be. So I think this is a little large. Can I tell you my personal opinion as to what size it should be? I can't at the moment because I could use that other gauge. But go ahead if you have other questions.
No, I was gonna. Do you want me to put the drawings back up, or you want to? I would love to.
Yeah. Why don't you do that so we can discuss it?
Hey, Jim, real quick, I just wanted to throw in, I was on mute and I was yelling. The 35 square feet is the temporary banner. The new sign size that they're proposing is 28.3. So it's not quite as large as what we were talking.
Well, I think we should take a look at how it's being measured, because it's the overall height and width of the sign. It's the top of the capital E to the bottom of the second line of text. Not, it's not the area that the letters themselves occupy minus the unused area, right? It's overall dimension.
Right. It's
right.
Rectangle around the shape. Exactly. So.
And it is temporary signs, temporary banners are not controlled as to the size of the lettering, only on the size of the sign itself or the banner itself. And whereby this is more of a, I don't know what to call it. It's more of something to cover over the old sign temporarily for a few weeks.
Temporary sign.
What is this grant? What's that?
If it's a sign that's temporary, it's a temporary sign.
Yeah, but but this is, we can reject it But I understand what they're trying to do with it. Basically, it's more like a grand opening type of thing where you rip off the temporary banner and voila. It still ends up for the zoning board. We can say no, but I think from the zoning board's point of view, they understand it's very temporary. It's not like a new business sign. It's covering over the future sign. It's a little odd and certainly not covered fully, and the intent here is not clearly covered in the code, but it is covered in the fact that it is a temporary sign. That answer any questions, Bob?
Yeah,
You sure?
I think-
no, but
think
it's
what-
good enough.
Sorry.
I'll buy it. I was fine with what Jeff said.
Well, I think the physical size of the sign as a temporary covering is understandable. And what the question then becomes is what's the size of the graphic on it? If you needed a 10-foot tall and a 20-foot wide sign, temporary cover, and then you wanted to put graphics on it to put the old signage back on it, I don't think anybody would argue that you could make those letters 10 feet tall and 20 feet wide, right? So I think the question is, and it's not for us, it's going to go to the ZBA, would be how big is the thing you need, how big is the fabric that you need to cover it? And then how big do your graphics have to be to go back on it?
Well, it is for us to determine in that we have to make a recommendation.
I'm talking about, we can make a recommendation, we just can't approve or we can't approve it.
Right, so the
Right.
purpose of the temp sign is to kind of, the banner, the temporary covering, is really to replicate what's there. So the idea is that we would go there, we would remove the existing signage, put the new signage up, and then cover it with a banner that basically obscures or hides the new sign, the new Rockland Trust banking sign. And on that is basically lettering that's very representative of what currently exists,
Right,
both in size and scale.
right. I think it could be argued that you break those two tasks up. One is to cover the new sign that you've put up. And then when you put when you're replicating the sign that's already there, I think it's an honest question to say, does it need to be a non-conforming size? Or could you reestablish the east bar, or whatever the current sign is, could you get it to fall within the 6 feet or some smaller size? So your physical object is the same size you're proposing. The graphics that go on it don't fill it right back up again, right? Over
Right.
the size that's allowed, that's all. Because I still
Okay.
think it's a temporary sign.
Well, the other thing is that we could do one or two things. We could say it could be 15 square feet within the graphics on the banner, or we could make a recommendation to the board that we would allow X basically, as long as it's only up for like 2 weeks. Give them a time limit basically as to how long it has to be up there or allowed to be up there. Whether they want to go with that or not, that's entirely up to them, but we still stand in a position to make a recommendation.
Right.
Anyway, I'm going to see if I can get off this thing.
No, I have a question while we're like in between stuff. What is behind the existing awning? What is it covering? Or does it just drop down in front of the existing window?
I have to actually look at some photos to take a look at that.
Because the reason I'm asking is because I'm thinking that if the awning isn't going to be allowed with the new signage, then does something need to block something ugly? You know, I don't know if there's something mechanical behind it or if that's just purely an aesthetic.
So it looks like it's part of the storefront, and I'll pull up some photos that show that a little bit. But I don't think the brick runs all the way across, but I don't know.
I think the concrete or stucco does.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks, yeah, I mean, it very well could just be that sign band that you see there, that is the stucco or concrete or whatever. And this is just tacked on the front of it.
Right, because you can see
Hanging.
in this image here, so this is part of the storefront and it's about the same
Oh, yeah.
depth. It's
Yep.
the same depth as that brick column. And then to me, in this photo, it looks like the brick stops right here. And then there's obviously a material right here. And that material could be this ephes looking material that's right here, which I don't think is ephes. I actually think it's concrete, but so that might be right here. And I have no idea what that looks like. I mean,
Yeah.
these
No,
awnings obviously have been up for a while.
And the only reason I mentioned is just because if it's something that is supposed to get addressed with the sign, you would need to know about that.
Right.
I'm gonna look at some 2010 photographs and see if I see anything in there that would be more. Probably not. No, it's not going to tell me anymore because I don't go back to the previous company that was in there. I mean, you see that black return plate under there. Does that come out and finish off to the stucco? So what happens is that when this comes off, there's a bigger stucco band there than what's there. You know what? You don't have it, I don't think, in this. Well, you can see it in the where the butter is. There's a doorway there. You don't have it, but I'm looking at right now where the Albion Dental Care is. To the
Yeah.
left. But Albion Dental Care does not have an awning. And that band that under the awning does not exist. It's window. So somehow there's a closure. That black in the awning is closure on the frame of the storefront and not covering over stucco. So if you were to look at the dental place, basically that whole strip comes right in. Yeah, there you go. So the awning is below that.
Yep.
Right. So they have a taller set of windows and just carrying these linear lines across the architecture. So something in that space appears to exist. So we'll have to check that out.
Now, if, for instance, or I'm just going to play architect for a minute. That could be a blue band. It doesn't have to be a fixed awning. It could be a blue band.
Okay.
Therefore, we're not involved.
Right. So if we investigate it and find that the wall surface behind the awning is just not suitable or presentable for the business, we could paint that blue or put a blue overlay panel on it. And would that require any type of further review, or is it just basically choosing paint for your house?
The thing becomes then is because blue is the corporate color, then does it become part of the signage? All right. And this has come before us before, where corporate colors that are used basically are looked at in a different way than if that was just white or it was pink or something. But where it's a corporate color, it's looking a different way. So I think it's a thing to ask the ZBA about, whether they're going to look at it as part of the signage. So because it's a blue color, they may not. But I think to give you enough leeway, I think you need to ask the question.
Okay.
And it may be, I mean, if you look on the inside, it may be that you just see the back side of a window with a black panel there. And so taking it off, the windows are all the same height, which I suspect that's what the case is, that the ceiling is up at that window height. And the awning really is just a black plate that covers over the back side, or they painted the glass or whatever. Who knows what they did?
Right. I would agree. Architecturally, I would think the windows are consistent from this space to this space. So I just don't know why they
Is that spandrel glass up above that corner on that the door in the corner? Is that spandrel glass up the top? So maybe there's a ceiling height.
Right.
Maybe the signal height on the inside doesn't go up all the way, and that's part of the reason why there's an awning
That could be.
Well,
covering it up.
the company that was in there before, back 15 years ago or more, was a cell phone company, and their color was orange. And they had
Yeah.
semi-curved orange awnings where these were. And that was allowed. It was a corporate color, basically, but it was allowed. So they've sort of, the bank has basically put awnings in the place of where the previous ones were.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now what we'll do, since awnings are not allowed and the ZBA cannot provide relief for awnings, we'll investigate what's behind those awnings, and either, the client will make a decision that, oh, they want to try to have a blue band, which could introduce the corporate colors, and that would be a discussion to have with the ZBA, or architecturally, they're just going to clean it up and have it just be an architectural component of the building with nothing, like, dark gray or white or cream, whatever made sense for the building.
Right.
Can those awnings stay if all you're doing is changing the signage? I know
No.
that they're not permitted to provide relief, and you can't do new fixed awnings. But if they came in and just proposed to change the East Boston Savings Bank to Rockland Trust, and the blue didn't match the corporate color, that's a client issue. I'm just
Right.
talking in theory. Could you avoid the entire conversation of the awnings?
I don't know that you could or couldn't. I mean, this sort of goes with Charlie's Pizza in a way, the whole discussion up the street, basically, with the old sign that's there. But that is a sign there. This is just an awning.
Right.
And I think the intent was that anytime the business has changed, they were fully compliant, basically, not partially compliant.
Okay. No, I think that's the logic, but I wanted to ask the question because
Yeah.
as applicant, I might ask that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Anyway, I mean, if you want to get technical about it, I guess you go to the building department and the town lawyer, I guess. I don't know. But from my view, the intent basically is to clean up buildings as they came along.
But you know what, though, I'm also thinking too that if that was my bank, if that blue isn't matching the blue in my sign, then I don't want it.
Right.
That's just, my, looking at it, that's what I'm thinking. So, okay, anyways.
Okay, I'll switch to the other document. So I'll discuss the awnings with the client team, and I guess if it comes down to it and they would like to know if they didn't touch the awnings at all, could they stay or go? That could be a question that could be explored with the ZBA that night. Is that
It could be explored, but I'm not going to support it. I'm going to
Okay.
basically play the hard line and saying, basically, you got to clean up everything. Period.
okay?
I mean, as chairman, there might be, others might have dissenting opinion. Mine might be dissenting and everybody else might go with it,
Right. No, it's I figured I'd worth asking the question.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
All right, so the question was, I think, was the
Yeah. So
28 versus the 31 square feet
correct.
on
So
the sign.
yep. So this set of letters, it has an overall height, and when I say overall height, it's from the top of the compass to the bottom, so the
Right.
top of the end, the
Right.
S, and that's 2 feet. And then this E, the overall letters, the cap height is 18 inches, and it's 15'6" from over here to here.
So the lettering's 18?
Yeah, the uppercase lettering is 18, so the lowercase lettering is probably 12, approximately.
All right, so that currently doesn't meet it anyway. All right. Plus it, like you say, it's like 31 square feet.
Right, it's 31 square feet. So the proposed sign is 2'2" overall, and some of that is the space this 2'2" dimension is really the overall from the bottom of the G to the very top of the R. And there's this space in here so that this is the kind of the preferred layout for the relationship of Rockland Trust to the word banking. There are times where that we can move banking up a little bit to change this measurement, say from 2'2" to 2 foot, which would change the overall square footage
Yep.
without really modifying the size.
What's the size of the R?
The I have that. Hold on. I think it's 14 inches, but I'll confirm it because that's a guess right now. I didn't realize it wasn't dimensioned there. So the O and the C and the K are 1 foot. That is probably about another 4 inches. It's probably 16 inches. It's probably about 16 inches, I'd bet, for the R, somewhere in that range.
So here again, that's an ask. If you're gonna stick with that, then you gotta go to the board with that as well.
Right, because of the height restriction on that one letter.
Yep.
And I'll check that. It's a close-
Now, just a point of interest basically is in the future, a thing like this where one letter or graphics basically breaks the box, it probably would be accepted in the future because it gives it a little more flavor than just a row of letters.
Right.
But, at this point, it looks right. But if you're outside that 14-inch box for letters, then you got to ask.
Right. So, but based on this discussion, and this is definitely a question, it seems like the aesthetic look of this text or this message, this logo, looks aesthetically pleasing enough that you don't object necessarily to that R coming down below these letters.
I don't know. I don't want to speak for the rest of them, but
Right.
I'll let them speak for a moment. I've been doing too much talking. Guys?
Well, I agree with you, Jim, that in the future, we might have the ability not to overlook, but to promote something like the descended R because it breaks it up. It's a little more visually interesting. We're hamstrung by the code that we have to follow. My only question would be whether Rockland Trust has alternate signage. I do a lot of work with colleges and they have 15 different ways to present the same information, depending on where it's being displayed. And so I'm wondering, does Rockland, the words Rockland Trust, do they have an alternate style for that where the word banking might go away and the dimension changes considerably? So the overall, the size of the R is 16 inches times the length, instead of 2'2" times the length. And you immediately pick up a lot of what we are calling signage area because we need to take the overall dimensions. I'm just wondering if there are other alternates, or is this sort of a global logo and it's sacrosanct on their side?
So their logo is fairly locked in and pretty consistently displayed throughout the market. I would say there definitely are provisions for not using the word banking. There are times where they'll just do Rockland Trust, which to your point would greatly reduce the square footage in this particular example. The relationship of the R to the block letters that say Rockland, that's pretty solid where they keep that like that. I can't say there's never a case where they haven't changed it, but 95% of the time that relationship is pretty important to them, especially with exterior branding.
Do you have any numbers as to what the overall numbers would be if you scaled that thing as it exists up to the point where the R became, met the maximum letter height requirement?
The 14 height, I can do some math and figure that out.
No, it's not going to magically drop under 15 square feet, but
No, it won't. I'm just doing some quick math.
I think, that might give us more leverage to be able to say the reason it's going over the size requirement is because of all the negative space, the white space. And we may be more inclined to support that if it goes to the ZBA and it's larger than is required, or the maximum required.
Right, right. I mean, even now at the 2'2" by the 13'1", just say, I'll round up that eighth of an inch there. We're still below, we're at 28.3 square feet, but we're still below the existing at 31. And I know that doesn't have as much merit weight because you've changed your sign code. But it's still, from a facade visual standpoint, there is a lot of negative space that you just mentioned. And we also could, I think, like if we move this up, the board banking up, so that we had like a 2-foot overall height, I mean, that 2 inches now would probably drop us down to about 27.5, so somewhere in that range, would be.
I mean, graphically, I'm pretty much fine with it. Whether the trust and the banking gets squished together or not, doesn't really matter that much to me. On the other hand, I sort of hear where Jeff's coming, and I also agree there, but I don't, if this is the character they want to have out there, I don't have problems with the fact it's blue. I don't have a problem with the fact that the R is bigger than the rest of the letters. Whether we can bring the R into the 14 inch scale or not, what that does, having the trust in gold or something like that, all of that element of it doesn't bother me that much. It's more about the scale of it on the building, and certainly it's scaling down from what East Boston had there at this point. And like I said earlier, I'd want to look at what the future code would say about this as to size based on, and if you just look at that image up the upper left where the two pillars are, basically. So if you were to pull a center line, or actually a center line on the abutter and to the outside edge on the other, basically that would be the dimension I would be looking at. And I'm trying to look now to see if I can find out what the multiplier is that we're studying. I think it's like 0.85 or something like that, but I'm not entirely sure. Might find this, but whether that pushes it down to 22 or whether it allows it to go to 25.
Mhm.
I'm not sure that's going to get it to 28.
Right. So, yeah, that would be interesting to. I can get that measurement. I probably have that measurement. It just would be challenging me to look for it right this moment. But if the relationship between trust and banking with the white space and between the words isn't objectionable, the bank or the client would prefer to leave kind of their logo as close to this as possible. If we were to pull out 2 inches, that would reduce it by about 3 square feet. Because if you take 0.25 and multiply it by the 13, it's about 3 square feet, 3.25. But either way, I mean, we're not going to get to the 15. So I think what we would ask is if the board would support this logo as it is in their recommendation to the ZBA when we go down that ZBA process.
I personally don't have any problem with like I said, the graphics. It's going to be more about the size, basically. That's where I'm coming from.
Well,
We
there's also
we
a
don't
pretty
have
large
to.
sign next to the door, though, right? So
The sign next to the door, I cannot support, basically. I can support the signage on either street, but putting a sign next to the door to me is just plain overkill.
Okay, I'm just going to skip that sign that you just mentioned for 1 second, just to go to the side street for a second.
Yep.
Which is basically the same. Everything that we just talked about on the front kind of pertains to the side, the same size, same architecture, everything. So that was good. I just wanted to bring that up before we went. Okay, good. So the sign that you were just mentioning that you don't support is this particular sign. right
Yeah,
covering-
I don't support it. I don't know where everybody else is, but I don't support it.
I mean, I'd be much more inclined to support the larger signs on each street if I didn't have to also have this one, because then it just opens it up. Anybody that comes before us is going to want far more signage than is allowed, or at least to have us advocate for it on their behalf in front of the ZBA. So I think I can take a defensible position about the two signs in the spandrel locations that are larger.
Mhm.
But I couldn't do it with this and keep a straight face, I don't think.
Okay,
The corner sign.
right. So and that's good to know. I mean, the two most important signs are the main elevation sign on Main Street and the side elevation sign on Albion Street, which we just discussed. So I will advise the client of your objection to that sign, especially in lieu of the new code, which really only allows the two signs if you have a corner site.
I mean, it might, if you're going to go to the ZBA anyway, you might try to keep that sign in there. It's going to be addressed in our comments anyway. But that's a strategy thing on your client's behalf, I think.
Right.
So if we know, I just pulled up the this table that's going to exist in the next code. If we know what that dimension was I was talking about before, between the two brick
Mhm.
piers,
Mhm.
do you have any clue as to what that might be?
Let me just take a look and see if I have that overall.
Well, the awning's 23, 1.5. And
Okay.
Yeah, actually, right.
So
So
add, so
those
add,
are 2 feet, right?
so add 2 feet to it,
Yeah.
approximately.
probably
Yeah.
on both sides, you would say, oh no, you want to go to the center line of the column?
Yeah, okay, so add 3 feet to it. So what'd you say the awning was?
23, 1.5.
23. That's with the piers?
That's inside the piers. It runs from
So
inside.
20 23 plus 3 is 26. 26 feet. Lettering heights could be 18 under the new one. Let's see, you're in the 26 to 30 foot zone. So you take the 26 times 0.83, 21.5 is what you come up with for sign size.
And that had that code you had mentioned before, the ceiling, the height of the building matter too. Is that
No,
correct?
that's not for, that's for the total area of signage.
Oh, total area signage. Okay.
So the aggregate area of signage, how many signs you can have. And that would take basically, so probably the business, even though your signs in the band, that's really up above the guy's floor above. So it's really from the floor of the guy on the second level to the grade is the height,
Mhm.
because you can't claim his space. So if you,
Somewhere like in here, right?
yeah, right where that mullion is on the right, on the far right, basically.
Yeah.
From there down would be the height, basically times the width. And then you got to basically measure that and take and look at how that is on the square footage going through that calculation that's in there.
Okay.
Jim, just a heads up, I have to leave in 5 minutes. Is that going to create a quorum issue at all?
I think we can close this.
Or?
We can continue this in a follow-up meeting if you want. Jason?
Not me. I think.
No, I'm talking about next week or something.
Right. Well, if you guys can, I haven't heard anything different from you folks, from you and Bob in terms of opinion from mine. So
Yeah.
if you can close it out tonight or today, I don't have a problem with that, and I don't want to hold up the client, the applicant's client.
All right, so let me summarize it. Basically, I guess I'm looking at something that might be 22 square feet as opposed to 28. But I'm not sure personally how that looks on the building. Is that too little or is it not? But that's what it would come out to under the future code. But it's much greater than the 15 square feet that was allowed, only allowed. And then the corner sign, I think we all say nada, basically. We don't want to see it at all.
Okay. And
That's
So we
not to say, Josh, that you, Jason, that you can't go and ask the board for it.
no,
Just
right.
what we recommend.
Right. No, it's good to know what you would recommend so I can weigh kind of how we want to position and go in on to the ZBA as well.
Now I can send you those sections that I showed you earlier. Basically, you can dig into the files on that, read that through yourself.
Okay. The other gentleman on the line is Terry Sullivan too.
Yep.
And he actually has that measurement. If I just saw, he texted me and said that, but I think we've even moved on beyond that now. And I know, Jeff, you have a tight deadline here. I did want to mention the existing channel letters do have the LED illumination, and you spoke that the code does not allow the illumination, but that is something we could visit with the ZBA. Do you?
I'd have to, I don't think it is, but let me, we may lose Jeff in the meantime, but let me look to see on that point. Gotta open up a file here. So there's a section that is called Prohibited Signs. And this is the area that the ZBA can't touch.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna have to skip out,
internally illuminated signs are prohibited signs. So the ZBA can't touch it.
Okay, so then just a real quick summary. The signs as proposed, it sounds like you would support the size of them at maybe 22 square feet, and the corner sign no is going to be a recommendation. We could bring the corner sign and these signs into the ZBA, but they cannot go with, we can't ask for they can't allow the illumination, so it's going to be changed to non-illuminated in any aspect with gooseneck lighting. And then
you don't have to do gooseneck, but if they want to, that's fine.
Okay. And then
it's not a required piece of lighting, but for the business in the winter evenings, basically, you may.
Right. Exactly. So, and then if I speak to the client and go through everything that was brought up on this call, and the client wants to bring the package completely into compliance and not go through the ZBA route, then that would be basically the 15 square foot limit, everything you outlined in that original document you showed us.
Yeah.
Okay. And then one last question. The client has some compliance and some regulatory requirements where they have to, rename this site by a certain date. So one of the things that might happen in that, and if we go the ZBA route, which I think they'll be interested in, we will move well beyond that date. That date is in early November. And they don't have really any leeway on that date. So what the path forward might be that we file for the ZBA package and with your recommendations and then your comments on the things you don't support. And, we go through the ZBA route, but that 90-day period is going to bring us to, Christmas time basically, or something far out. Could we put together an alternate package that would comply to the signage, the 15 square foot requirements, everything that was in the guideline that you had provided, and submit that package back through, would it go back in as a new permit or just come in to you guys as a separate amendment to this, saying we'd like to do this first?
I think it would come back here so that we can make a recommendation to guarantee your permit.
Okay,
And then there would be an understanding that this is a temporary situation,
right.
that it will be clarified further with the ZBA, basically, eventually.
Yep.
But that will allow you some sort of signage up there,
Okay,
and at least on a temporary basis. And it meets, maybe it's a 15 square foot sign that is, doesn't say banking in it for the moment, it just says Rockland Trust or something. And depending on, the other thing is, depending on whether you're 10% glass area at those doors, you could get a separate permit for just the doors,
right. We could isolate the doors out. Okay,
so that they are compliant. And therefore, you get a separate permit for that, and there's a separate permit for something else. See? The other way, and I don't know how the building department will look at it, basically, is to start your work ahead of time before getting approval from the board. And then you're at risk, basically, or your client's at risk. But that's a discussion you'd have to have with the building department. Basically, I can't make a recommendation either way, nor do I have the authority to.
right. No, of course. And so I think the path forward, and I will advise the client, and we'll sit down and go through it, is we're probably going to submit some signage that will allow us to have branding up there on the conversion time, within the conversion timeline that is within the 15 square foot and complies to more what is being required. And then we will have a ZBA package that will go through and do the ZBA route. Because I don't think we will even have the ZBA hearing. We might have the ZBA hearing. It's probably going to be an October date, I would think, at this point, but maybe it's September.
Well, we got one tomorrow, and there's 2 in September.
Oh, there was 2 meetings in September. Okay.
Yes. All right. It's the second week in September, and 2 weeks after that's the next one.
Okay. So
I can tell you what the dates are. The other thing is there's November and December, because of holidays, there's only one
okay.
month. So you should be shooting for
The September month would be great.
basically. So we've got the 18th, basically, which is this tomorrow. And then the next is the 8th and the 22nd in September. And then, I'm sorry, October has got 2, the 13th and the 27th. And then when you go to November, because of Thanksgiving and Christmas, you only have 1. So
Okay.
November is the 17th. And if you really want a Christmas package, you can go for the 15th. in
Okay.
December.
Yeah. We will, I'm sure we will do this as quickly as possible and try to get in for the September dates. I just need to, the deadline for the client from a compliance standard does not shift. So I have to be able to put some type of branding on the outside of the building by a certain date in early November. So,
Yep.
so we just
So
have to.
So if you, sorting through all this, if you've got some questions, certainly email me with the questions. I'll try and answer them basically where I can. On the other part, basically, if you get to a point, particularly with your client, you want to basically have another one of these meetings, nothing to stop you basically for calling for another meeting with us. And
Okay.
we don't schedule them. We schedule them on need. All right. We don't schedule them on like a standard day of the week.
Okay. All right,
And
that's great to
we have-
know.
And usually, basically, we have to wait several days because we got to put up public notice.
Right,
So, we can, after we decide to do something about 2 days, 3 days out, we can get a public notice out, then we can have the meeting. The only other tripwire basically is I've got to make sure my two guys basically are available as well at the same time.
right.
And the most common thing is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I will definitely confer the client, go through everything with them. I probably will reach out to you, Jim, with some questions or some things as we kind of put together our thoughts here. And and when you email me that document, I'll have your contact information, so that'll be great.
Yep.
And then we'll definitely, I'll let you know what direction we're going to take with which elements and how that will move.
Yep. Well, like I said originally, I mean, you can go in with all this and ask the board. I'm just telling you that there's some things that the board doesn't have control over. There are
Right.
some things basically they're going to look to us to make recommendation. Whether they agree with our recommendation or not, we don't control that.
Right.
They have their own minds.
Yeah. But the awnings and the illumination are something the ZBA
Yeah,
cannot.
no, you're stuck there.
Oh, I'm said the ZBA can not make any changes to the illumination or the awnings, basically, but the other stuff is all consideration.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Pretty much until you throw me a curve.
All right, excellent.
All right. Okay. Bob, anything from you?
Nope, nothing further.
All right. So I'm gonna hold for a day or so before I write any memos to the building department, basically denying this. Because I want to get a little more information basically from you, but I can't do too much of that because it really has to be discussed publicly as we're doing now. But I want to make sure that that maybe we don't need another meeting to clarify something at all. But so I think you've heard where we're coming from at the moment.
Yes,
The wall signs probably want to be smaller. We don't mind, like I say, the over character of the sign. We don't want a sign next to the doorway. We need to identify the total signage basically and what's allowed, because you may have to ask the board basically for a larger aggregate area. And you need to check the glass areas on the doors and the side light.
right.
I think those are the primary, I think, issues for you at this point.
Yes, no, I've taken some pretty thorough notes, so I appreciate the time this afternoon.
Okay, all right, good. So if we're done here, I need to close. So this is the design review board on August 16th, closing out our meeting on 381 Main Street, Rockland Trust signage, basically. And I thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll be in discussion, I'm sure.
Yes, and thank you very much, everyone, for your time. I appreciate all the feedback.
Okay, great.
Great. Have a great night.